Hello, and you might be wondering why I'm sat here in just a little slice of webcam between two fairly similar covers. Well, this video is to talk about the Cave Wars book that has just been released for Advanced Fighter Fantasy. And yes, it does have two covers, but I'll come to that soon. This book at the moment is available in PDF. It will be available in print. And when you buy it, you get two separate PDFs. You get Cave Wars Dwarf, Cave Wars Goblin. So what is Cave Wars? Well, this is another way to play AFF. In this game, you create a dwarf character. I have to get the sides right. And you create a goblin character. And you play them on alternate sessions. So one week you play a dwarf. The following week you play a goblin. The following week you play a dwarf. The following week you play a goblin. And the dwarves are residents of Stonehaven, which you might recognise from the Dwarven Halls campaign, and the goblins are residents of Blackfang, which you might recognise from the Dwarven Halls campaign. And they're at war, as implied by the title. So when you play a goblin, you are battling the evil dwarfs of Stonehaven, or the terrible dwarves of Stonehaven, the hated dwarves. When you play a dwarf, you're battling the evil goblins, the hated goblins of Blackfang. So there is an element here of sort of playing chess against yourself. And this is ideal as a Games Club game, or as a one-off game, or as a club game where you've got two teams, one playing one thing, one playing another. Because the way it's created, you can actually have two different GMs. One could do the dwarves, one could do the goblins, and so on. So what's in the books? Well, the character creation, the hero creation, is template based. You've got a core goblin statistics and core dwarf statistics, and to those you apply a template. So we've got a table for random name. We've got a table for random template should you want that, but generally you're encouraged to choose. So if you're a goblin, you might be an archer or an assassin. If you're a dwarf, you might be a gunner or a herald. And there are 12 templates for each type. And they add to your skill, to your stamina, to your luck. They give you a package of special skills. They give you a choice of 2 talents. They give you a choice of 2 gear sets. And if you're magical, priest, wizard, whatever, they give you a choice of 2 different spell options. So character creation is just a few minutes, and it's rounded off with a personality virtue, a personality flaw, and a distinguishing feature. Takes about 5 minutes to generate a hero with these templates, which means that if you only turn up occasionally, you can create one. And the chances of failure in this game are a lot higher than in standard AFF. So there is a reasonable chance that your hero will be killed. If, for example, you're an assassin goblin assassin, you're going to have a skill of 6, so okay-ish, a stamina of 4, a luck of 10, and you've got brawling 2. So when you're using a dagger, you're rolling and adding 8, but you've only got a stamina of 4. It's relatively simple to be killed. Dwarves are a bit tougher, so a dwarf gunner has got, I think, skill 10, but still only stamina 8. So the heroes are not as tough as standard AFF heroes. So failure is a possibility, hero death is a possibility. But that's okay, because you can recreate them very quickly. And the whole thing you're adventuring for is your town. So if you're a dwarf, you are adventuring for Stonehaven. If you're a goblin, you're adventuring to try and save Blackfang. And each of these 2 towns has 6 characteristics. You've got resources and population and military and magic and industry and wealth. And all of these have a different effect depending on how high they are. For example, if your goblin military is 11, then when you go on a mission, you have a random hero with an NPC template. If you've managed to get your military to 12, you get an experienced NPC goblin or 2 goblin warriors. But there's another effect to this, because if you are a dwarf going on an adventure against the Black Fang goblins, you roll on the goblin military table to see what the enemies are for some of the missions. And the higher the military rating, the more difficult those enemies are. So the military of 2 to 8 doesn't have an effect on whether you can take an NPC with you as a goblin. But if you're a dwarf, getting the military down to 3, the goblin military down to 3, means that your missions are easier because the enemy goblins are not as strong because their military is weaker. And there are bonuses for high magic, penalties for low magic, changes for different population. If you've got a population of 12 and what your goblin or your dwarf dies, you can create a new hero with 100 XP. Brilliant. If, however, your population is only 3, then only one person can get a replacement before an adventure, and that will have a random template. Now, if there are no heroes, there are rules around that. And when we look at the missions, these missions are randomly generated. So you've got a choice between 2 missions. The director will ask the players to roll and say, oh, you've got this mission or you've got this mission, you choose which. And there's a little text bit to read out. If you're a dwarf and you go on the attack mine mission, there's a little bit to read out. And then it says map size, 2d6 nodes. Well, what does that mean? You might remember in the AFF core rulebook, there is a method where you can drop some dice onto a paper to draw a dungeon. Well, 2d6 is how many dice you drop on. So you roll 2d6, comes up an 8. You drop 8 dice onto the paper, you draw your rooms, that's your map. And enemies, 2 rolls on goblin military table per dwarf hero. And 2 normal goblins in every node. So if there are 3 attacking heroes, there's going to be 6 goblin warriors defending of some type. There might be assassins or goblin warriors or enforcers or shaman or whatever. But there are 6 sort of adventure goblins, NPCs, and 2 goblin miners per node. Your victory is to eliminate all the goblins without any miners escaping. If you fail, your resources go down by 1. If you succeed, this is a dwarf, your resources go up by 1. Or you can choose to reduce the Black Fang resources by 1. Your choice. And then there is some direct information on that mission. If you're goblins, you choose the loot tomb. There are d6 plus 3 nodes. And this doesn't use the dwarf military table. This one has zombies, skeleton warrior, spirit stalker, ghouls, white decayer. And there are 3 rolls on that table per hero. Okay. And so there could be a whole bunch of different enemies within that dungeon, within that mission. And here you've got a choice of improving the wealth of Black Fang by 1, or getting an item that the heroes get to keep. So you've got all of these different rewards, and what it means is 1 week you might play as the dwarves and you might succeed and you put Black Fang resources down by 1, but then the following week you play as the goblins and you manage to succeed in that mission, you put your Black Fang wealth up by 1. So all of these ratings between 1 and 12 go up and down, and there is a way for one side to win forever, but it could equally be used at a games club where one table are played as the goblins, one table as the dwarves, and the GMs are swapping notes at the end of each session to see how the different towns are affected. And one other nice thing we did put in here is a couple of custom character sheets, hero sheets. We've got a goblin one and we've got a dwarf one. And these were designed specifically for this. So it's a really interesting way of playing AFF. You can keep your heroes going because your heroes, if they succeed, they still get XP at the end of a mission. They can still get better. But I think you get slightly less attached to them than you would in a big, long Dwarven Halls campaign or Crown of Kings campaign or Atlantis campaign or whatever. Because they're almost intended, not exactly to be disposable, but the idea is you can also build up a roster, because it might be if you're attacking the Goblin Mine, you might not want a Dwarven Rune Master. You might actually want a Dwarf Warrior type, or you might not want a Scout. You want a... So you can actually have different heroes, and of course by swapping them about, it means if one of them does get killed, you've got a relatively experienced one to slot straight in. But you get to play as different character types. So it's a really intriguing little game. Hopefully you will enjoy it. There will be a print version available. And the reason I've held off talking about that is that's going to be quite an interesting print version, because it's going to have the Dwarf book at the back of the Goblin book upside down. And the Goblin book is going to be at the back of the Dwarf book upside down. Very much like this old Games Workshop Call of Cthulhu. So you turn it that way up to read the Statue of the Sorcerer, but at the back to turn it the other way up to read the Vanishing Conjurer. So it's going to be in that format. So you read the Dwarf one, but to play as dwarves, you just turn the goblins, you just turn the book over. Hopefully that sparked your interest, and hopefully you enjoy that. There's plenty more AFF stuff to come, and another video soon.